and now we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and how it can take your brand to the next level. So thanks for being here. Now, I'll just briefly introduce both of you. Lidiane Jones, our head of product for Commerce Cloud Einstein, which is our AI initiative. And Adriana Bourgion, who is our regional success leader, who has implemented e-commerce and AI at hundreds of different brands. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
So we were just talking about holiday and Black Friday and the opportunity for AI to help shoppers get to the best experience, the right product for them as fast as possible. So what's your take on AI for the holidays and for every day?
Well, the reality is the consumer is very short on time all of the year, but particularly during the holidays. And the idea that you need to capture their imagination and interest as quickly as possible is a dream unless you have artificial intelligence helping you along the way. Mm-hmm. So it's a really critical part of making the most of that time to start building that relationship with the customer.
Adriana hit the point right where it needs to be. Customers are shopping all the time, trying to capture when an event matters to them, to the consumer. Can happen at any point, and it helps the retailer not count on so much of their sales on those few days of the year. So being more predictable and getting that user context is where AI can be incredibly powerful.
Earlier today, we were talking about how shopping behavior has changed. And it used to be that you would go to your web storefront, you'd browse through a catalog, put something in your cart and check out. But increasingly, we're seeing shopping move to the edge, to places like Pinterest and Instagram. So what is the implication for artificial intelligence and machine learning given that transition?
The reality is that consumers are already expecting those edges, right? They're expecting cross-platform engagement for shopping everywhere. So that's already a given. What's really challenging, and AI can be incredibly powerful and help retailers, is bringing that context. If you go to one platform and then you engage in another one, you want to actually learn what your customer journey looks like across platforms. So AI can help bring that personalization and context that user is having, regardless of where he or she is. And so, we will continue to expand on that context over time, but it's really where the power comes in.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a lot of change going on. AI is all around us. It's disruptive. It's part of our lives in so many ways that we don't even see already. But as you think about it for retailers and brands, how do they need to change their organizations? Not just the technology, but are there shifts they need to make internally to really harness the power of what's available to them?
There are. It's really important to think about the data and how to model it and ensure that everybody that touches the consumer has a view of what the consumer is doing and interacting, whether it's through the web store or through other platforms. And then it's a little bit of trust and a little bit of faith to get the organization behind really industrializing AI as a strategy, an important effort for the organization, and bringing merchants who might be a little reluctant to give up some of that creative curation that they've done with their products over to a machine. But really the idea is that if you take that away, they can replace it with a kind of really more forward-thinking strategies and programs to reach their customers.
I couldn't agree more. Machine learning and AI can feel incredibly mysterious to organizations. And at the end of the day, it's a tool for helping them make better decisions. So that the tactical work that they're spending, usually the very labor-intensive work, spending a lot of time doing, can be done by the machines, and they can be better focused on strategic efforts, as Adriana called out. So couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So we're pretty familiar in the industry with things like product recommendations and recommendation zones on your site. And earlier Holly Dresden was talking about the importance of AI in your site search, and we're seeing it in how products are sorted and the order of that. How far do you think this could go? Like where is AI headed as far as the experience we're able to deliver for our consumer shoppers?
AI is still really in its infancies for commerce. Recommendations and trending, there's just a lot of really great capabilities coming out already. But the reality is that we're still segmenting markets. And we really believe that where it's headed and we're investing on it is that it can be more personal to a user, to an individual. I take myself, for example, I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. If I go to Janie and Jack, which I do often, I actually have to spend a lot of time filtering out every single time what clothing makes sense for an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. So we really want consumers to be focused on getting what surfaced, what relevant to them. If it's back to school season, if I get to that site and I get all of the essentials right to me, I can actually shop more. And imagine also predictive pricing and bundling, because customers, if you know that this is the season in which I need to buy a bulk of clothes for my kids, we can actually make those more dynamic and customized to me. So think of that entire experience, the visual, the results, the pricing, being more dynamic and customized for each user. AI can really automate that, really scale, and really help brands focus on building that customer relationship. In my previous role, I worked at Sonos for a few years, and what we found is that customers would love the product, love the brand, but rarely would they actually take the leap or understand off the get-go that it's more powerful if they do multiple rooms. And so imagine understanding your space better and being able to recommend the right set of setup, configuration, the rooms that make sense. If you're buying a sound bar, the rears make sense. So that kind of capability not only helps the customer feel like they're going, it's good for business, you're selling more, but it's also great for the consumer. They're going to have a richer experience with the product. They're going to actually engage more long-term with the brand. So there's just an incredible amount of capabilities that are going to reshape how we think of the interaction with customers.
Adriana, what's your take on that? How are you seeing AI impact going forward?
Well, I think it's removing a lot of the friction, both in terms of the merchandising operations, but also for the customer. You mentioned earlier customers going and experiencing brands and products all over the place. They have a point of view, and if you waste their time forcing them to find what they're looking for, it really does negatively impact the experience. And I think it limits the amount of time that they'll allow themselves to discover other things you might want them to discover, and that could be a bigger solution or a system or a skincare routine, or even reading about your sourcing policies or how you're working in the community. If you've taken that time just to find the blue shirt, it's coming from someplace else.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but let's say that you were about to implement an e-commerce site and artificial intelligence for the first time on that site. What practical advice, or what would you want to make sure people think about if they're to start to implement and get the most value out of AI?
Use it. My first recommendation. It is sometimes counterintuitive to creative people to rely on data as part of their job. And again, this is not about replacing that. It's about removing some of that and embracing what data and artificial intelligence means in a positive and strategic way is really critical in a transformation. Understanding how distributed our consumers are, you need to be smarter about the data, and you need to get smarter about how iterative all of this is. It's never done because consumer behavior changes so rapidly. We don't know the next platform. We don't know the next Instagram. So this is a way to institutionalize a good look at the importance of data.
I agree completely. The first step can feel the most daunting, but getting started is super critical. because you will learn also organizationally what the capabilities of the insights that you have will be able to offer you, and and allow your creative people to focus their energy on creative tasks. So I couldn't agree more. One additional point that you mentioned that I think is so critical is that it's a journey. It's an iterative, long-term bet. It's reshaping how we do things. It's not a one-time investment. It's how you do business moving forward. So taking that first leap, understanding how it impacts your business, and then expanding as it works for your organization is the best advice for sure.
That's great. So that is really how organizations should start to think about harnessing the power of artificial intelligence and machine learning for their brands and businesses moving forward. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.